What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show. Me, Sean Sheehan, here on Sherdog.com. Absolutely delighted to be joined today by Bryan Lacey to look ahead to Oktagon 62, which is a massive card which goes down on October 12th over in Frankfurt, Germany. Obviously, Bryan, the lead commentator for Oktagon. Thank you very much for joining me today, Bryan. I would assume you're more looking forward to this card than maybe any card for yourself in the history of MMA, but definitely in Oktagon in your career. This is a big one, isn't it?
And it's almost, we feel selfish because you're trying to imagine what that's going to be like. We've already done one stadium, which was 28,000 people, which again, I made sure I took a couple of moments to look around. And then somebody at the end of it went, that's half the size of Eintracht. Selfishly, I am, I'm looking to soak in as much as possible. But when you look at the card, when you look at the tickets that they sold, we announced 3 fighters, not even 3 fights. We had the Jungwirth and Eckerlin, which is top of the card, the King of Germany battle, and Max Coga. And with those 3 names, we sold over 45,000 tickets in the first month. That for me is one of the craziest stats, just to see where we've come in 2 years of being in Germany to the German market responding in such a way that they recognize this moment as well. It's going to be massive.
It's crazy because, like, how many times has there been a crowd that big or bigger in MMA history? Maybe like 3 or 4 times, similar sort of things.
So this is the thing they keep talking about, because they keep saying, and you're probably the guy that can help me out with this, because they keep saying, and when you go through all the stats and the numbers, if you go back to Pride, there was some big events, 70,000, 90,000 arguably, but there's always these little asterisks about some of these cards. But also they were mixed, so they were K1 and they were MMA. So the line they keep saying to me is, this is the biggest MMA event, pure MMA event that will have happened. So, and I think we are at just over 60,000 tickets now. So
that's great. And like, I remember I was talking to Fleury a couple of weeks ago, and I think it was 55,000 like a couple of days before I talked to him. And then when I talked to him, it was up to like 58, and now he said it's over 60. That's absolutely crazy. I know the UFC did one in Australia, and KSW have done some big shows again, but Jesus, that's absolutely crazy. Could you just tell the people, who maybe haven't tuned into Oktagon before, who aren't massively attuned with Oktagon, is how is this possible? Because like we see, it's a great way, because like Dana White refuses to do shows, and I think a lot, and maybe correctly, like a lot of people have a fear of going to big stadiums and doing big shows, because like you could have put on tickets for sale and sold 6,000 and not 60,000, so it is a tough thing. But just tell us the background of Oktagon and how it's become so popular, obviously, in Germany and that part of the world.
Yeah, so the actual rise of Oktagon began Slovakia, Czech Republic, and it became their UFC. It became their ONE FC over there. So, and again, what they did differently was it's the storytelling. They make sure they put the fighters first. They tell these stories. They build the fighters, which bring fans, and then the fans become fans of Oktagon by way of that. And we went to Germany. I remember they were talking about it, and it was just over 2 years ago, and they were talking about this market. And I know it a little bit because of some of the people I know that fight over there, but there's no big shows. There was nothing like, and for me, it was almost like a warning sign, like there must be a reason that there's not big shows there. And then we went and we did the the challenge show with Eckerlin and Stefan Putz taking on the 2 Zavada brothers. And it just it was like a spark lit. And from that moment, we've moved from the Festhal, which was, I think, the first time we did it was 7,500. Then we've done Cologne, 20,000, and now we're moving into Frankfurt Eintracht, which is going to be 60,000 plus when it comes round. And for me, it just shows me that there's talent there. There's a real fan base, and the country of Germany is kind of been, there's so many countries in Europe where you look at them and you go, they're fighting countries like Poland or the UK or Ireland. Whereas I think Germany kind of got overlooked. And they've got some of the most fantastic gyms, some of the most, exciting coaches, fighters. Spitfire Berlin's just opened a massive gym, similar to American Top Team style over there in Berlin. So there was just the one thing that was missing was a medium for these fighters to have a platform to stand in front of their fans on. And Oktagon, I think, again, it's that thing with fighting. Timing is everything. They moved in. We've, built some fighters like Christian Jungwirth, who will be at the top of this card. He started Oktagon 20, walked out in front of, that was during lockdown, so I think less than 100 people in the room. and 13 fights later, he'll walk out as the main event into 60,000 people. So it's a culmination of, I think, big balls on Andre Novotny and Pavol Neruda, a real recipe of digging into the fighters and making sure that they're the ones that become the stars and they shine, and the market of Germany just being ready for something like this.
I think country like we see in the UK as well with obviously the big Anthony Joshua fights, but there's a history of like large stadium audiences, with obviously with the Premier League in the UK, but with the Bundesliga as well. Like I think the Bundesliga is the second most supported league in the world after the Premier League. So that, it's absolutely massive, and to kind of harness that, it's something, obviously they did it with the Klitschko's in Germany for years, and I don't know, it's weird that the fact that they haven't maybe been able to do that in America. Maybe they could do it in America, but it just hasn't been harnessed. But Oktagon have done a great job of obviously harnessing that over the last while. Just before we get into the fights as well, one thing I want to talk about, is I feel like this card is a great example of forcing people to watch Oktagon, right? Because it's not just Oktagon, but I see sometimes, you mentioned One Championship a second ago, there could be a Demetrius Johnson fight on, who's one of the greatest fighters of all time, and people are just not watching it. Or, there could be a great Cage Warriors card, or a great KSW card, or even a great Bellator card or PFL card. It's very tough to get people to tune in and to watch. Do you feel like this is a great opportunity to, really showcase Oktagon because of what's going on? This is a historic event, whether it's the biggest or the second or the fifth biggest, whatever it might be. 60,000 people. It's just such a historic event, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, and I think you can't ignore it. It's when you talk about, and even if you're not an Oktagon fan or you're a fan of MMA, people will hear about this show. The socials will go viral afterwards just because of the backdrop of the fight. 60,000 people. It's so unusual. It's very rare that this happens in our sport. Again, KSW have done a brilliant job. They've smashed it with their big shows, and they've got their style. And I feel like this is Oktagon's chance, like you said, to make people take notice. But then when you look at the card and the fights, when they watch, they're going to see it's not all fluff. It's not, just putting a load of bells and whistles on an event. It's going to be a massive crowd for what I think is one of the best fight cards across European MMA this year.
So let's talk about this main event. And Christian Eckerlin against Christian Jungwirth. Obviously, like myself, I've covered a lot of the cards over down the years, and these two lads have come up. But the King of Germany belt, where did that come from? How did that come up? And tell us about that.
So Christian Eckerlin was the uncrowned King of Germany. It's one of the maddest things. His first fight for Oktagon was in Frankfurt in the Festhalle, and I was there with Frank Mir, and I think we've talked about it before, but his walkout when he came out, it's epic. To feel it, not even just to see or watch it, to feel the crowd all lift that room up, that venue up for this one man was something special. I remember Frank just saying, he said, I've been in the room when Conor McGregor walks out. He said it felt like that. And he said, how do I not know who this guy is? How do I not know? But Eckerlin already had the fan base. He's already got, 500,000 followers on whatever platform, and, people following him. And then Christian Jungwirth, like I said before, he's risen through Oktagon, through his fighting style, just this absolute warrior in the cage. Not won every single one of his fights, but every single one of his fights has been one that you do not want to miss. And he's become equally, if not more famous than Eckerlin. So this whole thing has come up. Then you add to it, they're both previous footballers. So Eckerlin played for Frankfurt for a little while. Jungwirth played for Stuttgart or a team underneath it. And they've always dreamed of, they thought that was going to be the future. Add all those things together, you've got these big personalities. You've got two of the hottest rising stars in Germany, like the spotlight that is on them, not just for this card, but in their social lives. They are celebrities, big celebrities now. So when it came to lining this fight up, and it was teased a bit before Paleologus ripped Jungwirth's arm off in the Festhalle, it was supposed to be them fighting after that. But the timing has come with this event, and it is undoubtedly, it truly is, it will be to see which one walks away as the King of Germany. And I think they've added a belt to it, because I think it was either Eckerlin or Jungwirth said, let's do it. And you can't say no to them, not when it's they're not carrying the card on their shoulders, but that moment, that fight, the whole of Germany will be watching, and for it to have a belt now, like the BMF title or something, which is, you know, or even in WWE, the Intercontinental title, something like that, that makes it mean more than just what happens in the cage. I think, they deserve it, 100%.
It's I always when we're obviously about to talk about this card, looking through the Sherdog pages and looking to see does anything stand out. Do you know what stands out for me with Jungwirth is you're halfway down his Fight Finder page on Sherdog and you're at 2022. This guy has had so many fights. He's he had 4 fights in 2022, 4 fights in 2023. Or was it 5 fights at 1, 2, 3? No, 4 fights. Yeah, it's just so many fights. A lot in 2020, 2021 as well. A lot of fights, and like watching back on them, I would say it's a very, very well matched, very even fight as well. It just so happens, you know, the story you told there about the 2 German lads coming together, very, very interesting. Like Eckerlin, he's a very odd MMA fighter in that he looks like a boxer almost in there, like very slick jab, but kind of the MMA footwork, if you want to put it that way, and moves well. You know, I didn't actually know that he was a soccer player, but it kind of makes sense now the way he moves. He's very light on his feet for a bigger guy. And in Jungwirth is maybe more of a Muay Thai stylist, I would say, maybe a bit more muscular and maybe tries to land that big shot more, but I would be surprised if from you know him better than me, obviously, and you could tell us more here. This to me looks like it's going to be a good technical striking match on the feet. What way do you think it's going to go?
Yeah, I think it's much more than just a token thing at the top of the card. We're not this is 2 guys, and I think at the right point of their career, their ages to face off against each other. Jungwirth has caught up in experience with Eckerlin. Like you said, he's been extremely busy inside the octagon cage. Huge fights, was part of the Tip Sport Game Changer as well. Tested himself and had one of the fights of the year for me against Bojan Veličković. So he is battle tested. If you had jumped back 2 years ago and you looked at their records, you'd never picture Jungwirth fighting Eckerlin, but with his activity, the performances he's put on, and just how the fans have embraced him, he's kind of earned his spot up here. Eckerlin is somebody who is, like, I've been around him. He's got, like, he turns up in a new car every day, whether it's a Rolls Royce or a Lamborghini or Ferrari or whatever else. He's got businesses all over Frankfurt. He doesn't need to do this, but I've been in the room when he's training, and he is one of the lead motivators, one of the leaders of the team, him and Stefan Putz. He is putting in the work. Like, there's all these young dogs coming up through their gym, whether it's in UFD or whether it's in MMA Spirit in Frankfurt, and to watch how hard he still works at this sport after so long is inspirational. I think for this fight, Jungwirth will always want to make it a war. Like, he wants to give the fans that battle. For me, it comes down to what Eckerlin is willing to meet him with. I think Eckerlin's grappling is going to be above Jungwirth's, and if he wants to take it to the mat, it's whether he can keep it there. But Jungwirth has a phenomenal way of just turning every fight into a dogfight. And when you're in those trenches, like I've seen it, I even spoke to Bojan Veličković afterwards, and you watched they posted it today, the end of the fight. It's like the last 30 seconds where Jungwirth is covered in his own blood. He's walking Veličković down. And I spoke to Bojan after that, and he said, I've never not wanted to be in the cage as much in my life. Like, literally, like, there was not enough space. This thing just kept coming at me. It was like unlike anything I've ever faced. So that's the test. Eckerlin, I think, is cleaner in his technique and his experience, but I think Jungwirth is the guy to test, and especially over 5 rounds, to test his might.
Yeah, I think it was Jungwirth. I was watching one of his fights, and I don't know if he was finished in the fight or just got badly hurt, or was the end of the round or whatever it was. It wasn't in English anyway, and it was like one of the clips that comes up on YouTube. But he kind of got knocked down and was getting back up, and everyone was like, no, you're not fighting anymore. And he was just like going forward. He's like, no, I am fucking fighting. That's the end of it. And that's the type of fighter he is, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's a type of fight a casual would like as well, I think. You know, it's the type of, you could just walk in, and if you're not even an MMA fan, I think you'd like it, but I think MMA fans would like it as well. That's a fun one. The middleweight title fight then, Patrik Kincl against Kerim Engizek. Is that right?
Engizek, you nailed it. There you go, sir. There you go.
That was my biggest fear coming into very, very interesting fight as well. Like, I've watched a lot of Patrik Kincl over the last while. I always pronounce Patrik Kincl's name wrong, actually, as well. So this is an interesting fight. I feel like the welterweight, middleweight, light heavyweight divisions for Oktagon, but for KSW before it as well, and kind of that part of the world have always been really strong. You know, the likes of Soldic and Khalidov and more as well. And, you know, Kincl has been one of those guys that has just been around for so long. You know, he obviously fought Soldic and fought Tommy Romanovsky and, you know, the likes of Carlos Vamola and Alex Lahore, fought Vamola obviously a few times. And, you know, more like the likes of even Albert Jurev looking back through it, and Magnus Siddenblad gone back to 2010 and all. He's just been around since God was a boy, really. And, you know, Kerim is you know, I suppose the younger guy at 33 years of age, but he's been fighting for, you know, well over a decade himself as well, and has also been in there with some obviously very, very good guys as well, especially, you know, early in his career. You mentioned the Zavada brothers. He fought David Zavada back in 2012, you know, and he's on an insane run right now, and to get this opportunity, I know this is his third fight in Oktagon, but he's been fighting like in other promotions, especially around Germany for a good while, and getting a lot of finishes there as well. I love looking at the lad's record and seeing they've 20 wins and then seeing 17 have been inside the distance. We'll get into the technical parts of it in a minute, but this is a big fight for the middleweight belt, isn't it, against with two guys. You know, Kincl, a guy who has, you know, what is it, 9 of his last 10 fights or something like that, against Kerim, who's probably won, I'd add it up here, but probably like 10 or 12 in a row. This is a real high quality, high level fight here for the middleweight strap. Yeah,
and it's people are kind of looking at it as a big test for Engizek, obviously, because I don't feel like he's fought anybody of the caliber of Kincl or the fight IQ of Kincl. That you talk about the people he's been in there with, the performances he's put on, the belts he's held, the you know, just how good he is at all round mixed martial arts. But Engizek as well, but even though I say that, people kind of underestimate him. I think they think because he's a YouTuber, he hangs out with Islam Dulatov, that's his best friend. They've got this whole thing going on, this celebrity YouTube channel that's massive as well. So people misjudge, but the man can fight, and he's got that touch as well. He's got a very, very good right hand, and that is kind of people are looking at this. Will it be a passing of the guard? And when you talk about the middleweight division, especially now Makhmuradov is in the division and just beat Scott Askham, a lot of eyes are on this, and, you know, I feel like it's a worthy title fight. It's a big test for Kincl, and for me, I know he was trying to look, he needs to be motivated about fights, and the danger that Kerim Engizek brings, I think that is a good motivation for Kincl. So I think we're going to see, you know, this again, I feel like it could go all the way. I feel like this could be a 5-round war between these two to see who walks away with that belt.
And we've seen Kincl go 5 rounds before as well. You know, he's one of those guys that he's a big muscular guy, and he doesn't look A, like he should be that fast, and B, like he should have as good a cardio, but he does. He keeps going all day. And, you know, I remember looking at my old notes there and calling him a switch stance sniper. I think that's the best way to describe him. We saw the fight against Vamola, you know, the takedown defense was absolutely on point, and if he can keep the fight in the feet, you know, he can beat anyone. But Engizek, like, I was so impressed. This is the first time I've gone and watched him. I was so impressed with his game. Like, you spoke about the power there, and it's vicious, but I think the way he moves that jab, and it's always out there and always leading the dance. I think someone like Kincl, you know, who likes to obviously jab himself and sniper, he'll either have issues with that or he'll attack that. And when he does attack that, that's going to open it for Kerim to land that counter, because that counter right hand is absolutely vicious, and he's always moving, always looking for it. Like, sometimes when people, and we'll talk about Will Fleury's opponent Langer in a minute, he's one of those guys, he doesn't really move that much, and then bang, hits the counter. Engizek is always moving, and then he hits the counter as well, which is kind of unusual if we're talking about, you know, the metagame of MMA. And to me, you know, he might be a YouTuber or whatever, but that's high level stuff. There's no doubt about that. And when he gets on top, he's very, very good as well. Getting on top of Patrik Kincl isn't the easiest thing in the world to do either. But I think these top two fights are going to be, you know, I think the main event might go a little bit longer, but I think this one, I think someone's going to get hit very, very hard here, and it'll be all about survival after that. And maybe they will survive, or maybe they won't. But I'm looking forward to seeing it and seeing how it goes. There's a third title fight as well on this card, Brian, between Katharina Dalisda and Mallory Martin. Obviously, if anyone's been paying attention to MMA, will have heard those names throughout the last few years. Obviously, Dalisda from Frankfurt as well, so that's going to be big. But Mallory Martin, obviously coming over from the US, and they fought before actually back in 2012, but Martin lost that fight, and she's fought twice since and won both of those fights. Dalisda, obviously a big star. She's won her last 6 fights in a row with some good names on it as well. She obviously had a spell in Bellator, fought against our own Danny McCormack from over here as well. I always have to give out a shout out to Danny, how good Danny is. Maybe Octagon will give a shout to Danny and get away with a bit of money for that one. But this is a very interesting fight, Brian, isn't it? And good to see this one happening on this big card as well.
Yeah, it's been another story of like the rise of a fighter. Because if you jump back to Katharina Dalisda's, when she fought back to Danny, mixed record, not very consistent. She's now the highest ranked fighter in Octagon. That is the position she's earned with the victories that she's gained over these last 6 fights. And there's a beautiful story. So she is a very gentle human being. You meet her, and her hobby outside of fighting is knitting. She sits there and she makes little dolls or hats or scarves or whatever else. She's so quiet. She is absolutely dedicated to this life. Like, she's got another job outside of it. Now I think she's full-time fighting, which again is down to the changes she's made and becoming champion at Octagon. But there was a point where she would be, doing the full-time job, turning up to the sessions early in the morning, doing them in the evening as well. There's very few female fighters to train with the MMA spirit. So main sparring partners are people like Max Coga, who they've got a phenomenal bond. So them being on the same card is great. But she came to watch the Octagon 32 or 33, which was the first one in Germany. And she was way up in the stands. And again, her teammates were on the card. Eckerlin was on the card. Putz was on the card. And she sat back there and she made a promise to herself that she wouldn't sit next time, she'd be in the cage. And she made that come true on the next fight. And now she will be defending her belt in front of 60,000 people in Frankfurt, this city that has built so many stars, from the likes of Eckerlin, Putz, and now Katharina Dalisda. And she's just so good. And I feel like, for me, it's whether Mallory Martin has filled the holes in that last fight, because it wasn't, she didn't get finished, but it was a extremely technical, dominant performance from Katharina Dalisda. Controlled it completely on the feet. The striking was outstanding. The footwork, the use of the cage space was. It left Mallory had no questions to ask her. She was chasing the fight, but every time she tried to engage, it was all Dalisda. So for me, it's going to be down to what Mallory Martin learned from that. She's also won the last couple that she's been in, and she's looked phenomenal. Like the grappling is such high level, and she's a brute force in there at 115. But how much of that gap has she filled? John Kavanagh always says it. The rematch is a real, it's a bar to see the progress, or what you've gained since you last fought, and all questions will be asked. Or that's where I will be looking to see, has Mallory Martin made those adjustments to close that gap, which was huge in the last fight.
100%. Let's talk about Max Coga. He's fighting Antun Racic. You've mentioned him a couple of times there, and I every time I hear Max Coga, I'm like, his nickname should be the MMA Nomad, because he's been absolutely everywhere. I think this is his first fight in Octagon as well, which I don't know why I don't know why I'm surprised this is his first fight in Octagon, but it feels or maybe I haven't scrolled far enough down and I might have missed one. But he's fought M1 and PFL and everywhere you could have think of, he's fought, and he's coming in against Antun Racic, who at one point, like, Racic, you could have argued was one of the top lightweights in the world, beating the likes of Pavol Palladio a couple of times, Sebastian Pibic, Damian Stasiak and others as well. When he was in KSW. Obviously now he's moved over to Octagon. He won his first fight back in around this time last year, last summer even, being out obviously for a bit now. But this is a big fight. You mentioned Coga, obviously from Frankfurt himself, and it's going to be massive. But this is a fight, I think, that the winner of this could, title ramifications. Obviously, we know the tournament has been going on for the last while as well. But I feel like one of these lads, they've been outside of it, they could really get in there. So it's a big fight, not just for the area, but it's a high level fight for Octagon and the title picture itself.
Yeah, and the interesting thing for me is it's at 155, because Racic's last fights have all been bantamweight. So he's not come up one division, he's come up two to take this fight. And he is, like, we talk about how popular Eckerlin is. Coga owns Frankfurt. Like you go places with Max Coga and people are opening the door before you get there. Saying goodbye and leaving a restaurant when Coga is with you takes an hour because everybody kind of stops or he speaks to people as he's going through. He is like a megastar in that city. So that walkout will be one that I'll be looking forward to. He's got a great walkout song as well. But Antun Racic believes he can, upset the apple cart with this. He's got such good grappling and finishes, and he's fast as well. I feel like that speed that he can bring up in these two weight classes up to 155 could cause Coga a problem. But yeah, look at they've both got over 30 professional fights in top organizations, claiming belts in those promotions as well. And yeah, it's a great fight. It's a great fight, and Coga, I think, feels it could be a coming out party, like you said, as a platform for him. I will be interested to see if Racic still has his eyes on Jonas Magard, who's just re-signed for us. So I reckon he'll take this and then he'll work his way back down, because I know he's not happy that Magard or that fight never materialized. So that's what I expect.
Very interesting. Let's talk about Will Fleury, because Will Fleury, just before we started, I was like, Will Fleury is a great fit for Oktagon, and I really do think he is. Like, I see Will Fleury in like there's always been like Bob Sapp in Pride back in there, or Fedor in Pride, or even Phil DeVries in KSWD days, like the foreign guy who the home crowd grow to love, and Will is one of those guys who's a bit of a, he's a bit of a mad bastard, and he'll do anything or say anything, and he'll go in there. His last fight was fucking absolute madness. He just, he was kind of beating Skivior on the ground, and then he was just like, fuck it, I'm just going to strike with him and just win.
With the K1 Glory fighter, the kickboxer, and with a broken thumb as well. Like, literally his hand jacked.
Yeah, I think I saw it after. And it wasn't the first time it was broken either, was it? He's broke that multiple times, as Will. But it's a perfect fit, really, isn't it? And this is an interesting fight, because I think Will's ranked number 3 now at the moment. If he wins this fight, it's right into a title one. Tell us, obviously we know a lot about Will. Tell us a little bit about Pavol Langer, his opponent, and he's right up there as well, and has fought, I know, around the championship area for a few years now.
Yeah, so again, I think you bang on with Will Fleury. What was his nickname he gave himself? The Lion of Tipperary, or there's a few that was.
There's a few. He wants to be Will fucking Fleury, and he thinks he might get away with it. No,
we should get away with that. I think Andre Novotny will be all right with that. So we'll see if we can make that official in there. But he's going up against Pavol Langer, former interim light heavyweight champion. He is a very unique beast. He is. In everything he does, not just the way he fights, but also his personality. And he has become like a megastar. He's not got the best record. It's like 13-10, I think, is his record. But he has come through, like, he makes stuff work. Even the Ducis fight, he got so badly hurt. Like, if you were to pause that and ask everybody in the room how much money you're going to put on, Ducis finishing that fight, everybody would put their house on that. But Langer is, he's softly spoken, but he's a bit of a dog when he's in there. When he gets hurt, he almost becomes more dangerous. And he's massive for light heavyweight. It's a weird that he could easily be a heavyweight, easily, but he makes the weight every single time, and he dwarfs other light heavyweights. So physically, as a specimen, he's unique. He's somebody that you cannot switch off on. He's got deceptive striking. He's a good counter striker, very powerful, can weather a storm. Like, he's been in the fire a lot. So it's a real test for Will Fleury. And I feel like the fact it is the guy who had the belt, and if Will Fleury can go in there and do what Will Fleury does, then I think there's no argument. We've got a great middleweight division. We've got a fantastic welterweight, lightweight division. But I feel like we need stories and challenges for the light heavyweight division. And Will fucking Fleury could be that guy. And he's the perfect fit. He speaks so well. He's got the Irish charm. He fights like a motherfucker. And he looks great. So if he can get through Langer, I think there's no argument he should be up for the belt.
A fight card in Ireland, I think, it'd be pretty nice too. I know there's been hints about that as well. So let's make that up. The one thing about Langer, though, the record, okay, iffy, but he's won 4 of his last 5. Only losing to Carlos Famola in that, and that was a very kind of quick one straight out of the gate. But the 2 points you just mentioned there. when I was watching him with the counter striking, as you said, that was the thing that really stood out to me. But Will mentioned something that you mentioned there as well, and it's his ability to kind of hang on in there, and he comes alive almost when he's hurt, which is very interesting because like Will is the type of guy who, you know, he'll have to be very wary about that counter strike coming in because obviously Will loves taking lads down and pushing them against the cage and, you know, making hay, you know, in that sort of position. But also he loves to bring a guy into a war, and you know, he usually wins those wars. But against Langer, if he is well able to have the war as well, you know, one, it makes for a tough fight, but two, it makes for a good fight. So I think that could be a like, you know, if Will is to get this title shot, he might absolutely have to earn it. Like watching the two of them, I think Will should be the favourite, all right, and obviously the bet lines will be out later in the week. But it's a very, very interesting one, and one I think that will probably provide the next title challenger. Brian, I've taken up loads of your time, but there's one or two fights more I want to touch on. Muhammad Makhachev and James Hendon is just, to me, a phenomenal fight. Like, it was funny, I watched a good bit of Makhachev over the last while, and it's funny because Muhammad Makhachev, it always catches people up, and they were actually fighting on the same week once, and I did a double on my betting show, and it came out, so that was good. But, you know, this guy's an absolute beast. Beat Makran Amirkhani. You know, he's, you know, lost his last fight to Anquan Duke, but he's been on, you know, obviously a great run over the last while. And Hendon, obviously, people who've been watching Cage Warriors know an awful lot about Hendon. He's come over and had his Octagon debut in April and got a lovely finish there. But like, his one over to be a Cirilla was absolutely phenomenal. You know, he's been in there with the likes of Paul Hughes and Jordan Vucinic, very, very young in his career. You know, now at 26, this is really the prime of his career, and this is, you know, for Makhachev, you're probably thinking he's going to beat most guys, you know, who he's put in there against, especially coming off of a loss. But then you put him in there with James Hendon, and you're thinking, Jesus, that's you know, I don't know who's matchmaking that, but they didn't do him any big favours anyway. But at the same time, you have to. When you have a guy that good, I think you have to give him a guy like Hendon. And to me, like, I look kind of through the undercard. This is the fight that stands out to me. I absolutely love this fight, and I assume you feel the same.
Yeah, 100%. That was when I was looking at the card before we did the actual podcast there. I was thinking, that's what's your pick? And that is, as soon as they matched it, that is beautiful. Two young fighters in their prime, so well-rounded. Makhachev coming back down to 145. I mean, he fought in the Tip Sport Game Changer against the likes of Duque, who's massive at 155. So coming down to his natural weight class for me, and he is phenomenal. You look at his record and you look at the amount of wins streak he went on, and just the way he did it. He's got such a versatile game. He's, you know, extremely good on the feet. He closes this. He showed with Amirkhani, like, his boxing, his stand-up is phenomenal. But Hendon, for me, is, I think he's almost like a secret of UK MMA, because he has been in there with the Vucinics and the Paul Hughes, and, you know, what happened in those fights. But I think that was young in his career. I went up to Team Fish Tank to do some stuff before the Newcastle event, and it's one of those things when you go into gyms, sometimes you don't have to kind of ask who's the guy to watch. People kind of tell you. When you walk through, say, "Oh, make sure you watch the rounds with Hendon. Make sure you watch Hendon have rounds with him. Make sure," and everybody to a T would telling me, keep your eye on James Hendon. And you've got people in there like Phil DeFries. You've got some phenomenal fighters, but he is something special. And the twist in this is, if you see on his record, he's actually from Germany. He was born there. So again, military background. So returning, I don't know if he still speaks German or not, but it's kind of coming around. And I feel like, like you said, the matchmaker's not done him any favors, but also, like, this is a stage and a stadium show with two young fighters. They have to fight somebody like this. Yes. And I think it's going to be a real, you know, it's going to be a feast, an absolute feast of beautiful mixed martial arts by two of the most talented fighters in Europe.
Brian, just run us through a couple of the other fights there, because, like, Daniel Torres, one of the guys who stood out, you know, in this scene for a long time. Hafina Fuqua, I really rate him. Obviously, he had that lost a couple of fights ago, went outside of Octagon, got a win, is coming back into Octagon now again. Just run us through a couple of those fights that people will be looking forward to on this one.
Yeah, great. So Daniel Torres, again, moving back down to 145. He was part of the Tip Sport Game Changer. Lost to Ronnie Paradiso, who's now in the final for the end of the year show against Keita. He's just great, and he's already proved himself in promotions like KSW, but he's coming up against Nico Samsonidze, who fought for the title against Keita. This is Nico's first fight back since Keita shattered his jaw, and it wasn't just broken, it was shattered. So this is a big test for both of them. Torres coming back to 145. He believes he can go on the charge for that belt down there. Samsonidze in Germany, the crowd will 100% be behind him, but this is there's no warm-up fights. This is back into the fire for him. But it's a great one because then gets through Torres. He takes out a guy that people think could make that charge for the title, and he's back in the picture. Hafeni Nafuka against Orion Topalaya. Topalaya, the Afghan Eagle, just some people have an aura when they get in a cage. Like they want to fight. They're not here to test their skills or compete. They want to cause as much damage as possible in the legal circumstances that they're allowed to do so under the fight rules. And he's got that. He is a gangster. But then Nafuka is I won't say a one-trick pony, but he is so good at jiu-jitsu. His ability to get it to the mat and get to your back to get the submissions. And he's only young. I think he's 21, 22 years of age. This will be his 11th pro fight at a decent level as well. So those ones. And the other one to watch out for, and again, Trabalisi is making his debut against Max Holzer. And Holzer is another one of these guys. When people talk to you about fighters, they assume so much. And you want to put him in a room with somebody like Max Holzer, who likes watching Toy Story, or George Staines, people like this, all this different thing. Holzer has got this thing where he's not trying to be something different. He comes out like he walked out as Batman in one of his fights, as Buzz Lightyear in another one. Then he did his interview in the Batman voice, and all that aside, which captures people's hearts because he's just having fun. He's living the moment as much as you could want somebody to live that moment. And then on top of that, he's 8-0 undefeated and just a phenomenal grappler, like full mixed martial arts. But again, ask Corey Fry, like his ability to get to your back and to put you to sleep is outstanding. But his walkout, I imagine, will be special as well. So there's so many, my man. There's so many, and it's October 12th, 60,000 people will be in attendance. So yeah, it'll be beautiful.
Absolutely, Bryan. Thank you very much for joining me today. And as you said, October 12th. Over in Frankfurt in Germany. It'll be nice if you're in my part of the world or even in America, and a nice early card for you to tune into and to watch, and it's guaranteed to be a good one. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We'll see you all next time.